Danganronpa.
Weapon they used to kill Hifumi!
The weapon?
Yeah, because I mean, the way Taka and Hifumi were killed was almost the same, with them having similar fractures and all. But Justice Hammer 3 and 4 were still laying around in the nurse's office and equipment room, right? So if Hifumi was killed in the repository, the culprit would have had to grab
Monica.
So the corpse, so with
Those were
I don't think it is.
So then. What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it? Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Shoot!
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3?
Maybe Justice. Well, there's one. How was the culprit able to? How did nobody witness them? Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more.
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers! And, that's about it.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it? Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammer.
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice
No, that's wrong!
The murder weapon wasn't a Justice Hammer at all. No, it was something completely different.
But, seriously? A different weapon?
Specifically, a hammer from the repository. The killer could have easily used that to kill Hifumi. Now, all the hammers in the repository were covered in flecks of grit and debris. But for some reason, one of them had been scrubbed clean. And the reason it had been scrubbed clean was most likely because it was used to commit murder. If the hammer got covered in Hifumi's blood, of course they'd have to clean it off. I'd also like to point out that the repository has all kinds of hammers. Big ones, and even some flat mallet-like ones. I think whoever made the Justice Hammers used those as a basis for their design.
If that's true, that would explain the Monokuma Files note about the wounds being...
So Hifumi moved Taka's body to the repository, where someone then used a hammer to kill him.
Whoever did that is the true killer. The one Hifumi was working with. And the one who betrayed him. Hold on a moment. I still think it's strange to assume someone was working together with the way the graduation rule works. There is no benefit to helping someone else carry out a murder. So the idea that anyone would work together like that is simply ludicrous. We talked about this, did we not? Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Shoot!
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one, only the one who actually, assuming the rule holds true.
That is.
But that only really applies if there's one. In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive, assuming the rule holds true.
No, that's wrong! Since there were two murders, it's at least plausible that more than one person was involved.
What do you mean?
If there'd only been one murder, then yes, the idea of an accomplice isn't really worth considering. Naturally, if only one person can be saved per murder, an accomplice has no risk versus reward benefit.
Risk versus reward benefit?
The payoff for working together. The reward that balances out the risk of taking part in the scheme. There's no point in being someone's accomplice if there's no benefit to you. However, if there were some potential mutual reward for the risk, then cooperation becomes possible.
You're saying that two people could act as each other's accomplices to commit two separate murders.
I think that's what the true killer told Hifumi. They would each have an accomplice for their crime. And based on the case's events, Hifumi would have been the first one to act, murdering Taka. They made him carry out the first murder so he couldn't back out of helping them later on.
So in this case, there wasn't one single person committing multiple murders. Instead, each person killed someone, creating two separate incidents. And it only looked like one person because that's how the true killer designed it to look. A single suspicious individual, a similar weapon used in each crime, disappearing bodies. By creating one seamless set of circumstances, they made it look like one person was behind it all.
The mastermind picked their target and managed to convince him to go along with their plan. And then, to avoid the no accomplices rule, they simply killed their accomplice. Which, if true, means that betraying Hifumi was part of the plan from the very beginning.
That's just awful! How could anyone be so cruel?
You think so? I can't help but admire its cunning. Still, their choice of accomplice seems odd.
I understand how an accomplice could be involved. But then, who was the one pulling Hifumi's strings?
That's problem numero uno right now!
I refuse to give up yet! Since there were 2 murders, it's at least plausible that more than one person was involved.
What do you mean?
If there'd only been one murder, then yes, the idea of an accomplice isn't really worth considering. Naturally, if only one person can be saved per murder,
Risk versus
the payoff for working. There's no. However, if there were some potential mutual reward for the risk, then cooperation becomes possible.
You're saying that 2 people could act as each other's accomplices to commit 2 separate murders.
I think that's what the true killer told Hifumi. They would each have an accomplice for their crime. And based on the case's events, Hifumi would have been the first one to act, murdering Taka. They made him carry out the first murder so he couldn't back out of helping them later on.
So in this case, there wasn't one single person committing multiple murders. Instead, each person killed someone, creating 2 separate incidents. And it only looked like one person because that's how the true killer designed it to look. A single suspicious individual, a similar weapon used in each crime, disappearing bodies. By creating one seamless set of circumstances, they made it look like one person was behind it all.
The mastermind picked their target and managed to convince him to go along with their plan. And then, to avoid the no accomplices rule, they simply killed their accomplice. Which, if true, means that betraying Hifumi was part of the plan from the very beginning.
That's just awful!
You think so? I can't help but admire its cunning. Still, their choice of accomplice seems odd.
I understand how an accomplice could be involved. But then, who was the one pulling Hifumi's strings?
That's problem numero uno right now!
Here's my answer. It was Celeste.
So I'm the suspicious individual now, am I? I really do hate this kind of
A joke? I wonder.
So what you are saying, then, is that I specifically chose to work together with Hifumi. The idea that I would choose to spend any amount of time interacting with him, that I would go within 10 feet of that shit-fuck, brain-fat, lazy, worthless, goddamn idiot! Pardonnez-moi.
Just to be clear, there is evidence to support it.
Is that so?
It is. Throughout the investigation, there was certain behavior that was common only to the two of you. Considering what we've learned so far, it only further proves that the two of you were working together.
The behavior they had in common has to do with the suspicious individual in the suit. The only ones who ever actually saw Robo-Justice firsthand were Celeste and Hifumi.
Shush, the adults are talking now. As he said, only Celeste and Hifumi ever laid eyes on the costumed individual. If we accept that Hifumi was one of the culprits, we can't help but suspect what Celeste has said as well.
everything they told us was a lie?
After taking Hifumi to the nurse's office, we all began our search for this individual, correct? And not too long after that, do you remember what Celeste said? We headed to the second floor specifically because of what she claimed to have seen. Next, to draw us all to the physics lab up on the third floor,
She let out a blood-curdling scream.
and when we'd all come to see what was wrong, what was it she said? Once she'd done her job of getting us all up to the physics lab, it was time for her partner to get to work.
It was to get us to divide into two groups. So that we would discover both bodies at the same time?
In fact, Celeste was precisely the one who proposed that we split up. Well, if Celeste and Hifumi were working together, all those chance events suddenly become connected. And on top of that, that piercing cry of yours early on. That was to signal Hifumi, wasn't it? It was your way of telling him, we're on the third floor, everything's going according to plan. Why else would you let out a scream that could have carried across the sea?
I just realized another strange thing. When we found Hifumi in the nurse's office, who we now know was only pretending to be dead, Celeste, you were the first one to say he'd been murdered. You wanted to make sure we wouldn't have any doubt in our minds.
I don't believe it!
Hina, you were with Celeste when Hifumi's body disappeared, right?
Yeah? I was feeling kinda sick, so Celeste took me to the bathroom. Wait! Then that was...
She wasn't worried about you. She just saw a chance to help Hifumi sneak out of the nurse's office.
Each piece isn't much by itself, but start putting them together and the picture gets very ugly indeed. Wouldn't you agree, Celeste?
I have no idea what you mean.
Don't bother trying to deny it. You made one fatal mistake.
Oh, did I?
I didn't even catch it myself when you first said it, but looking back, I can say that that one little slip-up was your undoing.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about what you said after Hifumi's body disappeared and we returned to the nurse's office.
I remember her saying that too, but I don't understand what's so strange about it.
Then pay attention. Sakura, Toko, and I were first to discover Taka's body in the equipment room. Then Makoto showed up and told us Hifumi had been killed. So Sakura and I left with Makoto. Once we were in the hall, we ran into Celeste, and the four of us headed to the nurse's office. Now, the entire time we were together, none of us said anything about Taka being dead. Think about it. Celeste's comment doesn't make sense. It was completely out of place.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Although I don't really get what it means.
You hear that, Celeste? Everyone's having some trouble understanding. Could you repeat what you said? If you're really not the culprit, you shouldn't have any problem repeating it, right?
All I said was, they must really be enjoying this. Enjoying the sight of us standing around, frightened and confused. They must be positively elated. We are all going to die here. We are going to die, just like those guys died. And that is all I said.
And that's all it takes to finish this. What was so strange about Celeste's comment?
All I said was, they must really be enjoying this. Enjoying the sight of us standing around, frightened and confused. Must be positively elated. We are all going to die here. We are going to die. And that is
And that's all it takes to finish this. What was so strange about Celeste's comment?
All I said was, they must really be enjoying this. Enjoying the sight of us standing around, frightened and confused. They must be positively elated. We are all going to die here. We are going to die, just like those guys died.
No, that's wrong. That's right. There's no reason Celeste should have said, just like those guys died. When she said that, none of us had told her Taka was dead.
Exactly. And we didn't run into her until after we were all out in the hall. So there was never any chance for her to have seen his body in the equipment room for herself.
So how did you know, Celeste? How did you know more than one person had been killed? And how did you know they were both guys? Because Kyoko had also disappeared, right? So she could have been dead too.
You all have such vivid imaginations. You know that?
Imaginations?
You claim that I was lying when I told you about the suspicious person I saw. Then what about the picture I took? How do you explain this picture of the costumed villain dragging Hifumi away?
It has to be some kind of setup, right? So let's put the suit on. And then she used the camera's timer to...
Have you so quickly forgotten? You are just... I happen to know that this particular camera does not have a timer. In other words, it is an unassailable fact that this is a picture of Hifumi being dragged away. If everything I told you was a lie, how can this picture exist?
Simple. Are we sure that's really a picture of the suspect dragging Hifumi away?
What could you possibly mean by that?
Surely there are other explanations than the one you've offered up.
No, there is no other explanation.
it's not a picture of the suspect dragging Hifumi away, I would say it's a picture of Hifumi dragging the suspect away.
That's certainly within the realm of possibility. The one being dragged off in that picture isn't Hifumi, but the person in the robot suit. We've simply been led to believe that it's the other way around. And the strange costume might only exist to lead us astray even farther. If you saw someone wearing something like that in this situation, of course you'd notice and be suspicious.
That's what happened! You put me to sleep and made me out to be the bad guy in all this!
Such a thing is utterly impossible. Hifumi was dragging him away? Ridiculous.
Is it? I don't think it's ridiculous at all.
Then shut your mouth and allow me to educate you.
You dressed me up in that suit after I passed out! Then you just draped me across Hifumi and had him carry my weight! You tried to make me look like the bad guy!
Like I said, ridiculous. As you can see in the picture, the suspect is standing perfectly upright. If the person inside the suit... After all!
No way! You dressed me up in that suit after... Then you just draped it. You tried to make me look like...
No. Even if the person inside the suit were unconscious, they could still stand up like that, because that Robo-Justice suit had a certain characteristic.
That's right! They totally made a mistake when they made it, so it couldn't bend at the waist.
I'm not so sure that was a mistake. I think the suit was designed from the beginning to be used the way it was.
Celeste and Hifumi took the suit they'd specially designed and stuffed Hiro into it. That's how they were able to fake that whole thing. The point of it all was to make us believe whoever was in the suit was to blame.
Well then, I suppose this is checkmate.
Checkmate? Don't make me laugh, you idiot! What do you mean, checkmate? Celeste? Clearly! You want to cram me into your little guilty box? Well, there's one. Have you already forgotten what Hifumi told us as he lay dying? When we asked him who had attacked him, his answer was quite clear, was it not? He said, and I quote, Yasuhiro! In other words, Yasuhiro Hagakure!
Wait! But my name isn't really Yasuhiro! It's actually... Taro!
Your confusing statements don't make any sense. You're only making things more complicated.
He did say Yasuhiro, but are we sure he was really pointing the finger at Hiro?
What the hell are you talking about? I'll burn you alive!
Kyoko, what do you mean by that?
Think back to how Hifumi used to talk to us. How did he refer to each of us?
Shoot!
How did he refer to each of us?
I got it! That's right! Our last names!
Exactly. I know I heard him say Mr. Naegi more than once, but so if Hifumi did mean to say Hiro's name, he would have said his last name, Hagakure.
I'm sure it was just incidental. By indecent?
Don't talk.
Random chance. Now isn't that a convenient explanation? No. There's no reason to think he would have said the name any different than normal, but he must have run out of energy before he could say any more.
So Hifumi was trying to tell us the last name of whoever killed him?
But the name he said doesn't apply to anyone here.
Well, no. Hold on. There's one person it could apply to, and that's Celeste. She never actually told us what her real name is.
What did you just say? To think you'd take your false accusation. Come on! Enough with your idiotic blather. Yasuhiro is a loser's name. Do I look like a loser to you? Well, do I? What? I think I've earned the right.
Okay, then fill us in. What's your real...
Make sure your ear holes are wide open and lift. My real name is Celestia Ludenberg. Could you please stop making me repeat myself over and over again?
Hifumi was trying to tell us something. He wanted us to know the killer's last name, Yasuhiro.
If there's one person here who might have that last name,
It would have to be you, Celeste. You haven't told anyone what your real name is.
how many times do I have to tell you? My name is... Celestia Ludenberg! God damn it!
How long do you plan to go on pretending?
I'm not pretending. It's the truth. And since you have no way to contradict...
No, it's wrong! That's it! The handbook!
What?
Anytime you turn your handbook on, it shows the owner's name when it boots up. Monokuma told us all about it before. So all we have to do is check her handbook, and that'll clear up everything. That's how we can find out Celeste's real name.
That's an invasion of privacy. I refuse to cooperate.
Celeste, can you please just tell us what really happened, please?
Even when I'm put in check, it's just my nature not to give up. Because until the game's over, you never know what might happen.
Fine then. Let me settle it. Let me go over the case again, from the beginning, and shed light on all your crimes. And that'll bring everything to an end.